We're going to go ahead and start. My name is Candace Jenkins, and I am one of the executive team members. And we want to thank you for coming today. We're honored to have you here and to be able to present an expert in disaster preparedness from Riverside County. In the grand scale of things, we here in Sun Lakes and Banning depend on the resources of Riverside County for help with many types of emergencies, such as fire, rescue, and medical situations. So it's very important to us to know how we can be prepared to be safe and how to take care of ourselves until help arrives. Have you ever thought, I need to put together that emergency kit to use just in case? Or I've got to remember to get more bottled water for an emergency? Well, it's time to get serious about it. I'm going to introduce Eric Ramirez, and he is the Emergency Service Coordinator for Riverside County Emergency Medical Management, and he covers the Banning, pass areas, and unincorporated areas. Eric?
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Ramirez. I'm Emergency Service Coordinator for the County of Riverside's Emergency Management Department. And I've been under emergency management for about 3 years. Recently was picked up by Eric Cadden, my supervisor, to work the pass area. So I cover Calamasa and Banning and the unincorporated areas. This is Eric Cadden. I'd like to introduce him. He's my supervisor. Eric?
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? That has a lot of feedback. See if we can go ahead. Can you hear me without the microphone? Testing 1 2 3. Is that a little better? I'll stand away from the speakers. Hopefully it won't make that sound as much. There we go. I think we have it now. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? What's that? Fine. Oh, wonderful. We're very excited to be here. We're going to go over disaster preparedness and why you need to be prepared for a disaster. Again, my name is Eric Cadden. I'm one of the Emergency Management Program Supervisors. I oversee Districts 1, 2, which one? We just recently changed, and 5. We changed districts around last week. I've been doing emergency management for 11 years now. My background's been in the fire service. I've served as a firefighter, fire investigator, fire prevention officer, and I've been a volunteer fire captain. So I've been in the field for quite a long time. Started my career out as an emergency medical technician, driving the ambulances and everything else, and had a lot of fun doing that. But for the last 10 years, I've been doing emergency management, and we've been learning a lot. Disasters are here, and everybody thinks that FEMA is going to come in and save the day, but it just doesn't work like that. And we've seen time and time again, if you are not prepared for a disaster, you're going to be left on your own here for a little while. Resources are not going to come here. They're going to go to LA and Orange County initially. Why is that? Because they like LA and Orange County a lot better than they like us? There you go, it's our population. LA County has approximately 11 million people. Orange County has 3.5 million people. That's a small area, too, compared to Riverside County, which approximately has 2.7 million people. And we have over 7,000 square miles. We're the 4th largest county in the state, but resources are going to be scarce, and they're going to be going to LA and Orange County. So day-to-day operations, fire, law, EMS, emergency management, we're going to be there for you. We're going to be there for you. But when that catastrophic event happens, you're going to be left on your own for a little while. You guys are going, great, nice lecture so far. So uplifting, right? Okay. So why be prepared? First responders are going to be overwhelmed. Do you guys remember the Northridge earthquake back in 1994? That earthquake was not a major earthquake. It was not a major earthquake. It was a moderate earthquake. So many people say, no, that was a major earthquake, Eric. No, it wasn't. USGS says it was a moderate earthquake. Resources were overwhelmed. Okay, and it was an isolated area too. It was an isolated area up in LA. I lived in El Segundo at the time, and I felt it. And there was damage down in the beach areas there because of the liquefaction, where the ground is really soft there, so there was damage out there. But you all saw the bridge that fell down during that. So that was a moderate earthquake. So first responders are going to definitely be overwhelmed. Infrastructure is going to be damaged. This morning you got up, you brushed your teeth, took a shower, hopefully, right? The water came on, right? Day-to-day water's there. What happens if that water's not there? What happens if we have a major power outage? Right? What happens if the water's contaminated? So, anybody know where our water comes from and a lot of our infrastructure for like gas and electric? It comes from underground, and it crosses across the 15 freeway and the 10 freeways. So guess where the big fault is? Everybody hear about that fault, San Andreas, right? San Andreas Fault. Here's something that people don't know, is there's 5 very active faults in Southern California. Riverside County has 3 of those faults. Yeah, and they can all produce at least a 7.0 earthquake. San Andreas are saying a 7.8 earthquake, which is a major, major earthquake. At any given day, and this is prior to COVID too, hospitals were filled to 90% capacity. That doesn't mean that there were that many patients in there, but they had to look at staffing and everything else like that. So any day you go to the hospital, they're at 90% capacity. That was even prior to COVID. Now with COVID, numbers are going back down and everything. But what were they doing for ICU units? They were putting people in hallways because they were so overwhelmed when COVID was hitting. So now imagine if we have another outbreak of COVID or something else, and we have a major earthquake, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So we need to be prepared for that disaster. Okay. So here's a little video. It's a few seconds, about 20 seconds, for a fire that happened up in Northern California.
911 from Utility 2, we have flames cresting over the ridge on the north end of Panorama. We do have structures that are going to be threatened here in about 1 minute, 2 minutes. We probably need engines up here now.
Cat 445 to all 45 units, be advised, we have no engines left. There is nothing from 85 or 91.
Could that happen here in Riverside County? Absolutely, that could happen here in Riverside County. Do you guys remember the Silver Fire a few years ago? With that fire, the winds were blowing so fast and so much that when I heard the initial dispatch going out for that fire, the first engine out said, "We have a major column of smoke. I'm requesting the closest 15 engines, any type." They knew that this thing was going fast. The battalion chief who's in charge said, "Send me the next closest 25 engines, so this thing's going to go fast." Up at Papa Flats, they told people to shelter in place because they couldn't get out. There was one way in, one way out. Sure enough, somebody else got on the radio who lives up there, and he said, "Hey, if it crosses this road," I don't remember which road it is, "we're going to lose this." And sure enough, it crossed it, and we had a large fire. So it went on for several days. We had the Mountain Fire a few years ago. We had the Cranston Fire a few years ago. We had the Apple and El Dorado Fire. Riverside County also is rated number 10 for having large wildland fires across the nation. They're in the top 10. We made the top 10 for that, for wildland fires. So we do get a lot of wildland fires, and they're very worried about the conditions right now. Why? Because of the drought, and the vegetation is so dry. Not today, but certain days, the vegetation, the moisture that's in there, in the fuel moistures, are at 1, 2, or 3. You can go to Home Depot and buy wood that has more moisture in it than you can with the vegetation that's out there. So we're very worried about the fires. Remember I was telling you about the 5 very active faults here? We have the number 1, the San Andreas, kind of goes up here, very large fault there. We also have the San Jacinto and the Lake Elsinore fault right here. That's in between Temecula, Paris. They call this kind of the bowling alley right here. So we have 3 very active faults that can produce a 7.0 earthquake. This is a little video. There's no sound to it, but what's going to happen, it's time-lapsed right here. What's going to happen is the simulation is going to start here of the San Andreas rupturing moving up through the Coachella Valley, through the pass area here, the El Cajon Pass. But watch what happens to LA and Orange County. Okay, so we have the rupture. Again, it's time-lapsed. Pretty significant shaking going on in the Coachella Valley. Yeah, so they're still getting a minute's worth of shaking in the Coachella Valley. Looks like we won't get too much as compared to the Coachella Valley. Still strong shaking, though, because the San Andreas Fault goes right through this area. But look what's happening in LA and Orange County. That whole basin there. Usually when there's an earthquake, the further away from it you are, the less intense shaking. The problem with LA and Orange County, it is very, very soft ground. This is a very simple analogy, but what happens when you shake a bowl of Jell-O and suddenly you stop? What happens to that Jell-O? Keeps shaking. So that's what's going to happen to LA and Orange County. Now remember I was telling you about the infrastructure? Infrastructure, the 10 freeway starts to go up around in this area, up to Blythe and Arizona and everything else like that. The 15 freeway through the Cajon Pass going up this way. Major transmission lines for water, gas, and electric go through both of those. Okay. Also, that's a major route of commerce too. So we're not going to be able to getting supplies in for a little while there too. Do you guys remember when the 10 freeway collapsed with a flash flood out towards Desert Center? It happened in about 8 years ago. 8 years ago. They had to close the 10 freeway, so all the trucks that were coming through the 10 had to be rerouted. It took like 4 hours out of their way. They were saying they were losing $1 million a minute because of that. So it was really eerie because I got to travel that with nobody on the 10 freeway. It looked like something out of a horror movie. Nobody was on there at all, but the trucks had to be rerouted for that because of that. They've reinforced that bridge since then, but we get severe weather. Now imagine if you're caught out there on the freeway and you can't go anywhere either. So having plenty of food and water in your vehicles and your home. And we'll discuss, well, how am I going to do this? I don't even know where to start from. So we're going to talk about this, and what I'll do is we'll email this slideshow presentation as well, so you can refer back to this as well. Okay. So step one, have a plan, right? Start having a plan. Identify hazards. What hazards are around your house? What hazards are in here as well? So if we take a look, what hazards do we see right now? Maybe some of that. Ceiling tiles if we get an earthquake. By the way, when we get an earthquake, do we just want to start running? No. So what we want to do in this case, because we don't have a sturdy table, is that we want to drop down and we want to duck, cover, and hold. But what we want to do here is duck down right here and put our hands over our head and hold the chair. That way it's going to protect our heads. There's been that thing called the triangle of life. That thing has been debunked by many, many experts. USGS, Earthquake Alliance, I think even the Democrats and Republicans actually agree upon that, is don't do that part of it. So, but we do not recognize the triangle of life, so if you've heard of that, it's not recognized by any authority. The gentleman who came up with it was basically in third world countries, and he said, hey, these structures are just going to collapse and pancake. Our building codes are designed so there might be damage, you may not be able to occupy, but the houses just are not going to collapse, okay? If there's an earthquake also, you're not going to be able to run. Imagine this whole room moving back and forth and shaking 6 feet like this. Can you run? No, you can't. So just stay in place, get under a table. If you're in bed, stay in bed. Identify safe spots and dangerous spots. Where are some safe spots in your house? Anybody have a bookshelf that's not secure to the wall? How about in your kitchen cabinets? Do you have your kitchen cabinets, are they secured, or do you just open and close them? There's devices you can buy so when the shaking starts that they'll automatically lock so you don't have to worry about all the dishes flying out afterwards. How about as you're going around this facility or any other facilities, where are safe spots? The other thing too is not just a disaster, but realizing where are safe spots and dangerous spots and looking for exits, because now we have to think about what, sadly, is potentially active shooters. So I always look at where's the exit of a facility, look of ways of getting out. It doesn't take much. You don't have to go up to the business owner and say, excuse me, where's the emergency exit in case there's a fire or an active shooter? Just take a look around. We all came in the same way, right? We all came in the front door there. Where else? How else can we get out of here? Over there, over there. It didn't take too long at all with that, right? So the other thing is identify evacuation routes. How would you get out of here? Whenever you fly on an airplane, right, what do they say, where the exits are? Just take a look for a few minutes. Look in the movie theater, look in the restaurant, wherever you're going. Identify responsibility. There's a lot of people here today, and this is great. Thank you so much for coming out, too. We greatly appreciate it. But who's going to do what? I know there's an emergency operation team here as well, so who's doing what? Have you talked to your neighbor? If you have family members here, you live with someone or you don't live with someone, how can they shut off the gas? Or who would do search and rescue, those type of things. So identify responsibilities. Identify utility shutoffs. Does everybody know where their gas is? The gas shutoff is. Does everybody know how to shut off their gas? Okay, very good. For those of you who don't, we do teach community emergency response team training. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's one thing that we'll teach you. There's only 3 times that you shut off the gas. The gas company has told us when you see it, hear it, or smell it. Well, how can you see natural gas? Because it's invisible and it's colorless and it's odorless. They purposely odorize it. A lot of people think that, oh, the natural gas, it's toxic, it smells bad. But they purposely odorize it. So know that it's, you can't, like the old saying is, I'm going to put my head in the oven and take my own life. Well, that doesn't work like that. We don't want you doing that, of course, but natural gas is not, it's not toxic. So it's purposely purposely odorized. How you can see it, anybody have the dust bunnies in back of their dryer? Yeah, I'm the only one. But you can see the dust bunnies moving in the back, or you might hear it going sss. That's when you want to shut it off. Get out of the house, call 911 if you think it's an emergency with that as well. Okay. Identify meeting places. If there's a big earthquake and you guys are going to form up a CERT team or you have family members here, identify, hey, if there's a fire or there's an emergency, here's where we're going to get, how we're going to get out of the house and where you're going to meet. Sounds silly, right? Friends come over and we say, hey, if we have an event, we're going to meet in the backyard here if it's safe to do so. Okay, because if somebody sees me evacuating our house for some reason, where's Eric going? So it's a good idea to have identify meeting places. Okay. Storage of water. Well, you need a gallon a day per person for at least a week now. They used to say a gallon a day for 3 days. But they're realizing you need a gallon a day per person for at least a week. That's a lot of water. Okay, and people are saying, well, I can't drink that much. No, but also maybe you just want to brush your teeth. You're not going to use it to bathe or anything else like that. But you need a gallon a day for at least a week per person. The other thing is, how about if you have water in your car? Does anybody have water in their car? Yeah, water in their car? Okay, good, because the 10 freeway never gets shut down, right? That never happens, especially with all the construction that's going on. How about what's gone on lately with the trains? Have people been stuck behind the trains? Yeah, it's going to get a little worse because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make up for all the cargo containers that haven't been delivered, so they're making the trains a little bit longer. Yes?
One thing that we learned at the community awareness meeting was that if there is an earthquake of 4 point or more, all trains will stop within a 50-mile radius. All trains will stop, no matter where they are.
I didn't even know that. That's good to know.
Until they are inspected. Big surprise.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Okay. People often ask, well, how do I know, like, water expires, and, how do I know when I should use it? Well, if you're concerned about your water expiring, what you can do as it's getting ready to expire, just use it, drink it up. Right, and then replace it. I've drinking water that's been expired 5+ years in the Mylar bag, drank it up, no problem. My hair fell out, but other than that, it was fine. So, okay. Consider additional water from pools and spas, maybe for using dishwashing. That water is precious. The drinkable water is precious, so you don't want to use it for bathing or washing dishes. Okay. Different ways you can store water. I do apologize. I'm on call, and then just want to make sure that we're not getting one of the text for a different call out. Water storage, there's different containers you can buy. You can buy the Mylar bags. What if water is contaminated? If water is contaminated, you can boil it. Make sure it cools down. You can also add bleach to water too. Make sure it is a non-perfume bleach. It doesn't have like lemon in it or anything else like that. If you have to use the bleach, what you're going to do is use 8 drops per gallon and let it sit for 30 minutes. If the water is cloudy, what you're going to use is 16 drops and let it sit for 30 minutes. Okay? Then you can drink it. But make sure it's being diluted, right? 8 drops, which isn't very much. Okay. Food and household goods. Store at least 1 week of non-perishable food for every person. Does anybody have non-perishable food in their house right now? Your disaster kit's started. Right now you already have a disaster kit. A lot of people don't even think about that. Okay. Keep it in a dry, cool spot if possible. Do we get heat out here? Does it get hot out here? Not quite as hot as the desert, but we still get heat out here, right? Okay. Inspect all food for signs of spoilage before use. We do that now, right? Sometimes that milk that don't smell right. So that's what you want to do there. Don't forget about pet foods. I don't think we have to worry too much about baby formula so much. But maybe with grandchildren's plates, handheld can openers. Why handheld can openers? No electricity, right? It's a disaster. Okay. No electricity, it's a disaster. Having extra medications. People will say, well, I'm on a budget, and I understand that. You don't have to go out and buy all this stuff. There's a great store, and I'm not advertising any store, where everything kind of costs $1. Well, with inflation, and maybe it's $2 or $3 now. But you can go to like those stores that everything costs $1 and buy supplies there as well. The other thing too is plates, utensils, handheld can openers. If you can treat a disaster and be prepared for a camping trip at a moment's notice, you're prepared for a disaster. A lot of people will ask, well, how will I know when I'm prepared for a disaster? Treat it like you're going to do a camping trip at a moment's notice and having those camping supplies. Extra blankets, sleeping bags, and so on. Okay. Disaster food supplies. There's all sorts of disaster food supplies you can actually go out and buy. They have a 25-year shelf life, which is really good to have too if you're able to do that. That way you have an emergency food supply, and sometimes they self-heat, so they're really good to have. Okay. Protection of family and business assets. Maintain hard copies of vital records. What is everybody going to nowadays? Digital. Everything's digital. Everything's digital. But having hard copies is very important and putting it in a safe. So especially your birth certificate, driver's license, bank statements. I would be careful about credit card statements though, okay? And then have cash available. Because if you don't have cash available, guess what's not going to be working? ATM. The other thing with that too is with the cash, you want to have small bills, right? Because if you have only a $100 bill and you go to buy water, guess how much that water is going to cost you? $100, right? And keep cash in your vehicle as well. I always keep cash in my work truck. I'm not going to tell you where it's at, but I do keep cash in my work truck. Just because the ATM has been out, or sometimes I forget my wallet. Fortunately, I know if I'm with my team, I forgot my wallet again, guys. Sorry, they buy me lunch, but no. But you want to have cash, primarily small bills, and some coins with that too. Protective clothing and equipment. Have heavy gloves and boots. One of the things that we don't want to have is during a disaster is start saying, I'm going to wear my flip-flops, I'm going to search and rescue and not have long pants. Because if you have open-toed shoes, you're going to get cut. You're going to get cut because of the debris, glass, and everything else that could be out there as well. So having goggles and safety glasses as well, very, very important. We all have that for our work, just for our work stuff, but at home I have all of that as well. And then also protection from the elements. Do we get cold out here though too? Yeah, absolutely. So it's very important to have the extra warm clothing too. Right now I have my jacket, my sweater in my vehicle, and everyone's like, it's summertime. Yes, it is. You're absolutely right. It's summertime, and it is hot out there. But I've been on incidents where I've been out in the desert, and it's been quite warm, and I've had to go the back way up to Idlewild, and it wasn't warm. So I always keep my jacket and everything else in there as well, too. Having that stuff in your vehicle, having kits in your vehicle is always a good idea as well. Okay. Learned first aid. Anybody ever done first aid and CPR? Very good. During a disaster, we don't do CPR on people, and we teach that in the CERT class. The reason why is we teach people with triage, and the same thing within the fire service and on the ambulances. If you come into a room where there's a mass casualty incident and we have, well, about 100 people in here, and I stop and I do CPR on him, right? I'm doing CPR. Well, a few of you are bleeding out and I can control the bleeding. He's not going to make it anyway. Sorry. He's not going to make it, right? Because we don't have the resources to get them to the hospital, and we teach that in CERT, and that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to do, but we need to move on because we need to save the people we can save, right? To stop the bleeding or maybe opening up their airway, and we teach that in our CERT classes as well. Build first aid kits for home and school. Have you ever been without a Band-Aid and you're just like, oh, I just need to get a little cut, and it's annoying, you want that Band-Aid, right? Yeah, have plenty of those kits. I carry extra Band-Aids because I seem like I'm always cutting myself now, but in a Ziploc bag. I have those in my vehicle, my personal vehicle and my work truck as well. Okay. Remember to rotate some of your supplies because they do expire. The Neosporin, other stuff like that does expire. It's funny because I've used some of that stuff past their expired date and they still work, but like 5 years later and it's supposed to be clear white and it comes out like a green. It's like, yeah, I think that's not good. Okay. Oh, sorry, I got to get closer to my... Okay. Alternate heating and lighting sources, wood-burning stoves, right? Extra blankets and sleeping bags. Those are very important to have. Again, treating it like a camping trip. Flashlights with extra batteries. One of the things that I recommend is buying flashlights that all use the same battery size, right? Because the reason for that is like, okay, I got to go buy a D-size battery. I got to buy a C-size battery for this flashlight. Now with the LED lights, most of them just take like an A or AA size battery, so they're really great. Lanterns, generators. I would say don't use candles. Those are the last resort. The reason why for candles is if there is a gas leak, one, and for some reason, and it's happened before, and you can't smell the gas, it does happen on occasion, you have an ignition source there. The other thing too is if there's been a major earthquake, are we going to have aftershocks? Yeah, so we can have an aftershock. We start shaking again, candle falls over and starts a fire. The other thing I like to use too is glow sticks. Glow sticks are really great too. I remember we had a power outage, my kid's like, I don't want to go in the bathroom. I popped a glow stick, put it in there, and we couldn't get him out of the bathroom. I'm like, come on, get out of the bathroom now. Glow sticks are great to have. Plus, the glow sticks you can use when you're doing search and rescue or you're just kind of walking around the neighborhood and everything else like that if you don't have the flashlights. They're very inexpensive to get. Emergency prep and book literature. Yeah, we have some information back here. It'll help you start with being prepared for a disaster. Again, making sure you treat it like a camping trip. Anything you think you need for a camping trip to make yourself more comfortable is what you want. We'll give you suggestions, but see what other people are doing as well. Basic first aid, basic home repair manuals. And then how many people are YouTube graduates? What I mean by that is watching YouTube and you watch YouTube and you go, oh, I can do that now, right? I'm the only one? So, okay, there. It's starting to feel like bad. Like, oh, sometimes I watch the YouTube stuff, oh, I got this, and I call the repair person later on, which will make it worse, right? Okay, again, camping and wildlife, wilderness guides. Alternate communications, because guess what's not going to work? Your cell phones. How many people still have a landline phone? Okay, well that's good because landline phones are probably still going to work during an earthquake after a big event. The other thing what you can do is if with your cell phone you might be able to text and you might be able to call to somebody out of state, so it's important to have an out of state contact as well. My cell phone, Eric's cell phone, because we're emergency workers, we get priority and it's going to go through. We've seen that before where, yeah, you guys have priority, and we call them like, it's not going through. Yeah, they're all down. I'm like, okay, well, I guess there goes that priority, right? So we're not relying on our cell phones either, but we have ham radio operators out there with RACES, Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Services, and they're going to be the ones who are going to save in us when the communications go down, right? We have a lot of redundant communications, but ham radio operators, they're the ones who are going to be able to get the information up to our EOC, and we're going to be able to get that to the state with ham radio operators if it's that catastrophic. of an event. So we've seen that time and time again with ham radio operators. A few years ago, there was a typhoon in the Philippines. This one was really destructive, and the first radio communication that came out from the president was via a ham radio because there was no other communications with that. But also listening to the radio stations out here, the alert, warnings, emergency alert system. How many people hear that when there's a storm coming? How many people think it's annoying? Yeah, it is, let's be honest. But it's very, very, very important to listen to. The reason for that is listen to where they're talking about where that storm is. Right now, over the Apple and El Dorado burn scar area, we're watching that very carefully with the National Weather Service because there's a cell over there, and they're thinking it could possibly dump enough rain that we could have a little bit of mud debris flow. So they're not sure, though, but we're watching that very carefully. As I walked out a few minutes ago before we started, I was like, oh, it's getting cloudy over here now. So pay attention to those because you're thinking, oh, that's far away. But what happens when we get flash flooding? It could be raining up there. 30 minutes later, the water's coming down in this area, and we want to stay away from that area. Don't drive through it. A lot of people, I can drive through it. You don't know what's been taken out of that roadway. It only takes 12 inches to move your car, 12 inches of water to move your car, and then you're in a world of hurt. So remember the saying is turn around, don't drown with that as well. Let's see, I think we covered everything there. Oh, different radio stations, they have the emergency alert system. The other thing, too, is sign up at alertrivco.org. You'll get the emergency notifications when the evacuations are going on. We don't give out your information with your cell phone number when you input the information, but I've got bad news for you. Your information's already out there. How many people have recently gotten your car warranties expired? Yeah, we all were like, hey, I thought our phones weren't listed, but yeah, so your phone numbers and information's out there. Oh, waste disposal, what are we going to do? Because trash service is not going to be available and plumbing's not going to be working. So what are we going to do with human waste and trash? Well, what we can do is bury it. I know it sounds bad, but we can bury it. I don't know if you don't like a neighbor, maybe you take your waste and you throw it over the neighbor's yard. I wouldn't recommend that. We want to be good neighbors. But there's plenty to do with human waste and pet waste. What are we going to do with that? We want to put it in a bag and bury it, okay, if we're able to do that too. But again, remember, toilets aren't going to be working with water. Well, here's one thing. If you have, if there's ponds or pools around here, you could take a 5-gallon bucket of water, pour it in the back of the toilet, and flush it that way. But also you want to make sure that no pipes are broken either. But you may have to have a little homemade toilet like this, or you can buy these as well. This is a little homemade toilet, and then having kitty litter in there. So you might have to do that as well. Okay. Protecting your family and your property. Get to know your neighbors. How many of you know each other? Very good. Get to know your neighbors, and there's safeties in numbers. Organize your neighborhood through Neighborhood Watch and CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, and learn to defend yourself in a manner in which is in line with your personal values. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, what you should do, or anything else like that. Everybody has their own personal values, but sadly, there are bad people out there. I know we're behind a gated community here, and that is great, but there's bad people out there. And if I saw this group of people, I'm like, oh, okay, there's safety in numbers. But if I only saw one person, I'm going to pick on you now. I saw her, and I'm a bad person. Her as an individual, maybe not being aware of the situation, is an easier target. So learn to defend yourself in case there are those bad people out there. They are out there. We know they're out there, right? Okay. Taking CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. Members do not self-deploy. In other words, when we have that catastrophic event, what we want you to do with the training is taking care of yourself and your family, then your neighbors. Is there a CERT team here already, or? We have a similar setup. Very important to join this if you haven't done so already, being part of that team, because everybody brings something to the table. It doesn't matter what. Somebody brings something to the table. So how CERT came about was because of the Mexico City earthquake back in 1985. There were over 700 spontaneous volunteers, but sadly, there were over 100 that were killed because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to look for. They ran into buildings. They didn't have personal protective equipment. So LA City Fire Department started the CERT program. It came nationwide through FEMA, And then we're able to teach it here in the county. It's a 20-hour course. People are like, whoa, that's 20 hours. I'd rather be golfing. Me too. But, learning how, taking those 20 hours, we're going to teach you how to use the incident command system so we can organize our teams here. It's very easy to do. We're going to teach you how to do disaster medical operations. So if you come in this room and there's 100 people, some are screaming, some are yelling, what are you going to do? We're going to teach you how to use a fire extinguisher, how to do that safely. We're going to teach you how to do light search and rescue in that building. Light search and rescue is the key. And we're going to teach you what buildings to avoid. And at the end, what we do with all the stuff that we learn is we have a simulation at the end. We have usually an earthquake simulation, and we make it as real as possible. We put in fake props in there, fake wires and everything else like that. And as part of the simulation, when people do something wrong, they touch a person with wires, or they leave their buddy, or they're not wearing their personal protective equipment, we say, you're injured or you're dead. Not for real, but it's part of it. And we usually get people mad at us. Well, that's not fair. Well, you're going to remember this, right? Because we told you time and time again through the class, don't touch people with wires. There's a wire running right there. Did anybody capture the utilities? We're going to teach you how to shut off your utilities as well. So that's what the CERT class is going to do. It's really a lot of fun, a lot of information. And plus, we're going to give you free PPE. You're going to get a helmet, goggles, gloves, a CERT vest. Oh, we should have brought that equipment to show off. I knew I forgot something. So we'll have that, those classes, and you'll get all that equipment with the class as well. Okay. Again, I already kind of went over this. There's safeties in numbers. Just remember, watch out for each other, help each other out. Okay. How many people have pets here? All right, we don't want to forget about Fido and Fluffy. Very important to have extra food and water, food bowls for them. Again, the great place to have extra stuff like that. Dollar store, pretty inexpensive. Having extra leashes, medications. Learn pet first aid. Know which animals know which shelters allow animals. Many shelters do not allow animals, so know that. And I know a lot of people, they say, I don't want to be separated from my animal. I get that, but inside the shelter you can get a place to rest, you can get food, you can get some behavioral health, because it's going to affect us greatly on that, so there'll be a behavioral health specialist out there. So maybe putting your dog in the shelter or your animal in the shelter just for a little bit, because we have that with animal control. And I see a couple of faces like, nope, not going to do it. And that's okay, I get it, I understand. But also make sure that you take a picture of them too, because that look like anybody's dog? Yeah, so take a picture of them and everything else like that. Okay. Biggest thing is stay informed. These are before the disaster. Rivco Ready is ours. Rivco Ready, RIVCO.org are the county ones. And again, I will send out this PowerPoint so you guys can have a copy of it and you can have access to these web pages. So again, Rivco Ready, and that'll give you a lot more ideas of what to do and have for your disaster. Oh, I did forget one thing. Anybody on prescriptions? You don't have to raise your hand. So, yeah, right. The other thing is people need to have at least a 30-day supply of extra prescriptions. And you're saying, well, how can I do that? Ask your pharmacy if it's not a narcotic, if you can have an extra day or extra 30-day supply of medication. They may do that for you. The other thing, what I've done is, and I'm not suggesting this, is I said, I went to the pharmacist and I said, I don't know why I put it on the back of the toilet. The lid was on. I knocked it over and they all fell in. Can I get an extra day of supply? Worked once, twice didn't know. But the other thing that you can do is, usually when you get low on your medication, usually 7 days out, you get the prescription refilled, right? Well, one of the things that you can do is save those 7 pills, right? The next month, save additional 7 pills. The next month, save 7 additional pills. And then you have 3 weeks worth of medication right there, right? So then you use the older ones, because they expire after a while, right? So that's another thing that you could do as part of that too, is just saving 7, save 7, save 7. And then you'll have and then 7 more. So you could have up to a 30-day supply. Okay, with that, remember, disasters don't always happen someplace else. Remember, it is not if, it is when. It is going to happen. It is going to happen. Whether that's catastrophic, it doesn't have to be a major disaster, but we're going to have fires, we are going to have floods, we are going to have earthquakes, we're going to have, do we get wind events out here? Yeah, even my hair starts blowing. Here's a question for you. What is the number 1 most common hazard that we have here in Riverside County? Fire? Wind. I hear fire. I hear, what was the other one? Flash flood. You win 1,000 bonus points. It's actually flooding is the number one, the most common disaster that we have here in the county. Yeah, it's actually flooding. So, earthquakes, high impact, high intensity, low frequency. Fires, higher impact, higher frequency. Same with flooding too. Okay. With that, are there any questions? Yes, yes, sir.
On a major fear, we get a fire and you get all these cars trying to get out. Where did they go? We saw what happened when one train stopped for 3 hours. It was an absolute gridlock.
Okay, great question. The question was, what happens when we have one way out, right? Is that your question? Okay, if you see a fire and you think you need to evacuate before even the evacuation warning or order does come out, I would start getting ready to pack up. You might have to shelter in place too, if the fire is moving so fast. That's the same thing that happened with Papa Flats. There's several other areas up in the mountains and other parts of the county. You may have to shelter in place. Here's the other thing. We give shelter in place, we give evacuation warnings, and evacuation orders. Can we force you to leave? No, it's your property, right? You can stay there. But here's the thing. We don't, and I know I'm not answering your question so much, but the problem is there's only one way in and one way out. You may have to shelter in place.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that. When I used to live in San Bernardino County, the sheriff had over 900 reserves, volunteers. We have a disaster. They were expelled. We directed traffic, let the police officers, firemen go do their jobs. And we have that in Riverside.
I don't know how many reserve deputies there are, but this is here within the city of Banning, so Banning PD would handle that. And then what Banning PD, I don't want to speak exactly for law enforcement, but what would probably happen is Banning PD would ask sheriffs for mutual aid, automatic aid to help out with that. So to guide traffic and everything else like that. We've seen where the sheriff and law enforcement, they go out, they do guide traffic, and then they block the roads too. So, but with, sorry, I'm being videotaped? No, no. But with that, if you hear an evacuation warning, that is the time to get ready, get your stuff, and go. When it's an evacuation order, that is the time to get out immediately, because if it's an evacuation order, it's bad, okay? And we do not issue those lightly. We do not issue those lightly. And a lot of people say, well, the fire's out. We want to go back home now. There's no smoke. There's no fire. There are so many hazards. There are so many hazards that are still going on, even though the main part of the fire has gone through. There are down trees. There are trees that can fall. There are down power lines. There's gas lines that have been ruptured and fires blowing across the roadway. So if we don't let people back in right away, it's because there are still significant hazards. And believe me, law enforcement, they give the order for evacuations. They don't take it lightly. They don't go, hey, you know what do you think? Should we just kind of... No, they don't take it lightly. They don't like doing that. But they are going to make sure it is safe along with fire, and the same thing before we let people back in there too. Just because the fire's gone and the smoke's gone, that doesn't mean the hazards have gone away. So yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
After an earthquake, how do you determine a building is safe to enter or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
After an earthquake, how do you determine a building is safe to enter?
Right, well, that's one of the things that we'll teach you in the CERT class, is whether it's safe to enter. We teach about light damage, moderate damage, and heavy damage in a building. If there's heavy damage, if you look, oh, it's just not safe, don't go into that building. The other thing with that too is what you want to do is walk around the entire building, and that's what we teach you in the CERT class, to take a look at everything. Don't just go, okay, yeah, this front wall looks good, because you don't know what's on the other side of the building. So walk around the entire building. If you're unsure, don't go in there. If something just says, you know what, something's not right, follow that sense. I call it the spidey sense or the force, whatever you want to call it, the hairs on the back of your neck. Something's not right. Follow that instinct and don't go into the building. But that's one of the things that we teach in the CERT class as well, what buildings are safe if they're lightly damaged or they're heavy damaged or moderate damage. So, yes, ma'am.
I was in the Northridge earthquake, and after the earthquake, somebody goes around and make markers on the homes.
Right.
Tell people whether it's safe to remain in the house or they have to get out.
Usually what will happen is the building department, in that case, since it was so big, they'll have building inspectors and they'll have damage assessment teams to go in to say, yes, this building's safe to go into or it's not. The other thing you'll see too is there'll be markings like usually an orange X. That means the search and rescue crews and teams have gone in there and that they've searched that building. And as part of CERT, we'll teach you that as well, that how to use that X and whether it's safe to actually do search and rescue on that. We don't do whether the building is safe to enter or anything else. We can kind of visually look and go, hey, it's not safe. And we have a lot of different pictures in the CERT class. We show, well, what do you think about this? Well, here's the other side of the building. So it's important to look not just right here. You got to look up, down, everywhere. Everywhere. We should be offering a CERT class. I think we're coming up, it will be sometime in September or October. We're working with Mesa and City of Banning with that in Beaumont. And go ahead, Eric.
It's for Banning and Beaumont. We'll be holding a CERT class out there. I don't know exactly when we'll have it, but I'll forward those emails out.
Yeah.
Anybody got some questions?
The other thing is you can go to Rivco CERT, R-I-V-C-O, CERT.org, and it'll have other classes too. Yes.
There's no electricity. Our streets are torn up. Who opens our gates to get out?
I will for $49.95, but no. No, that's going to be up to you guys and the property management company to see what the plan is for that. Usually, and forgive me, I'm not sure about this property so much, but if there's a security team, usually they may have access to open it up. That it's going to be the responsibility of the owners. It's not going to be the responsibility of the city.
Yes, question about the gates. We have a system that we can use to manually open the gates. We have the securities personnel trained to do that in a power emergency. And also, we used to have people in EPAP, and we're looking for more to help us. We train people to open the gates and stand guard on the gates. Okay.
That's good to know. Yes. Can you give her the microphone? Just so other people can hear you.
Island is a bridge. There's not too many places for us to go from here.
Right.
So sheltering in place may be the safest thing. That's why we have to listen to the alerts.
Exactly, because if that bridge does collapse, like you were saying.
And thank you for the notice about the difference between first aid and CPR. I am your Red Cross first aid instructor. And many people said, why aren't you teaching CPR? I teach the AED, and he spoke to it. We need to do bleeding, breathing, fix what we can. I will be teaching CPR and AED classes in the fall after the big quake out.
Oh, very good. Also, the big quake out with the big shakeout, that's October 20th. What they do is on usually the third Thursday, you can register for it. On 10/20 this year at 10:20 a.m. is the Great Shakeout, so it's a good thing to register. The Great Shakeout, it's a website. If you Google the Great Shakeout, you can actually register to say, yes, I will participate in the Great Shakeout. And what you do at 10:20 a.m., you might have a big exercise. Well, the county does it. We actually duck down under the tables, and we participate in the Great Shakeout. So, yeah.
I just want to address that. We will be having a drill with the Great Shakeout, so there will be more information coming, but we already have that in the works and have already had our first drill meeting. So just keep your eyes and ears open. There will be more information.
It's in October.
October 20th at 10:20 a.m.
Folks, you guys got a lot of resources here and a lot of people that are doing a lot of work. You got someone who's teaching first aid and CPR, so take advantage of that. Help each other out. help each other out. I saw another question. Yes, ma'am.
This is a really extreme question, but years ago there was a song that said, "Where do you go when there's no San Francisco? It's time to tie your boat up in Idaho," because we're supposedly, geographically, we're sitting on a ledge. So what size of an earthquake would it take in the San Andreas for us to go swimming?
That is a great question. A lot of that, though, is not true. That's according to Dr. Lucy Jones. If you know who Dr. Lucy Jones is, she is the earthquake lady. I can only imagine what size earthquake it would take. It would be something that would be way off the Richter scale. But they're not, like I remember when I was a kid hearing that oh, California's going to fall off into the ocean. That's not true. The other thing, too, is that we probably won't get a tidal wave coming from the Pacific Ocean out to here. If a tidal wave comes out here this far, it's pretty bad. So. Yeah, you can see the dust when there's an earthquake. Perfect. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I will always have to refer to my experience in Northridge. A lot of people were not able to return to their homes right away. So what they did was they went to the parks. Here in Sun Lakes, there's a lot of open spaces, and we are more safer. We are safer here than to drive out, because when you drive out, the streets or the highways will be full of vehicles. So the best way is if the management is able to allow us to utilize the open spaces here, this is the best place to be. And then some of those people who are able to go to the parks, they have their own tents, where they can, if they have to stay for a few days, then they can stay in their tents.
And again, right there, treating it like a camping trip. Maybe the best thing is staying here, having the tents and everything else like that too. But treat it like a camping trip. If you can treat it like a camping trip and you're prepared for the disaster, it's going to be less impactful. Will it be scary? Absolutely it will be. But being prepared will be less impactful and a little less scary, knowing I have food, I have water, I have extra medications. I can treat it as a camping trip. So it will be scary, there's no doubt. But when you're prepared, it's less scary. Any other questions? Yes.
What about the wildlife around nighttime?
I'm sorry?
The wildlife at nighttime?
The wildlife?
The wildlife at nighttime?
Bobcats, you got coyotes, you got mountain lions.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the wildlife around here, but you want to be careful about the wildlife because they're going to be scared too. Yeah, they're here. So I would contact Fish and Game and maybe Animal Control about that with that question, or we'll follow up too with Fish and Game with that, so we can get that question answered for you. Yeah, I don't have that answer. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric and Eric. I'm Dick Spalding with EPAP, and it's Candace Jenkins and Terry Gigan over here. We'd like to tell you a bit more. Don't leave yet. We got more information for you. We have some information about EPAP we'd like to share with you, so let me do that for you. First of all, when you moved in here to Sun Lakes, you were given an EPAP manual. And here it is. And this is our EPAP plan. EPAP stands for Emergency Preparedness Action Plan. And that is the preparedness organization right here in Sun Lakes, so it does all the work with you. So you should have a manual like this, and if you don't, let us know. We have some back there by the table. But this outlines our plan, tells you how to be prepared, how we work here in Sun Lakes to do the EPAP preparedness, okay? So also, you were given, should have also, a file of life. This is the thing that has your medical information on cards in the file, and you put this on your refrigerator, and it contains all of your medical information. When the paramedics come to your home, they will look for your refrigerator and see if this file of life is there. If it is, that gives them the information that they need to figure out how to treat you and where to transport you. Without that information, it wastes valuable time. So again, make sure you have a file of life, and if you haven't, if you put it in your drawer, take it out, fill it out, and put it on your refrigerator so that you have it there available to you, okay? Next thing that you should have somewhere in your home is this golden card. This card is used when we have an emergency in Sun Lakes. This is used, you put it on your window, front-facing window, and it is used to tell your zone captains that you are okay. So like when you have an earthquake, get that card, put it in the window, that'll tell the zone captain he doesn't have to worry about you. Otherwise, he's going to knock on your door and try to find out if you're okay or not. All right? I'll skip over some of this stuff, but telling you a little bit about EPAP, okay? We have a network of nearly 500 volunteers here in Sun Lakes that activate when an emergency occurs. We have our own emergency operations center, radio communication system, ham radio, medical units, and other essential resources. We use radios to communicate with our districts and with city and county emergency resources. We do not depend on electrical power for communication. As you know, there are 23 districts within the Sun Lakes community. Each district is set up to have a district delegate, alternate delegate, EPAP coordinator, alternate EPAP coordinator, medical rescue team, and program manager. Within those districts, there are many zones. Each zone is assigned a zone captain who will go out and assess the damage and resident injuries within their zone. They look in your window for that card, and if they don't see it, they'll be knocking on your door. After assessing the zone, they report back to their command post in your district, and the EPAP coordinator reports their findings to the OC. Medical rescue teams can also be sent out to treat injured persons in the district. Well, that's how EPAP usually works in here. Also, want to tell you this. We're working on several projects in EPAP right now. We're working on a video that describes how and what EPAP does in an emergency. It should be on Channel 97 around the middle of August. We also are doing videos on what you should pack in your go bag, what type of foods in your pantry you should have during an emergency, and how to turn off your utilities if needed. These videos will be shown on Channel 97 and Good Day Sun Lakes. They will also be placed in the folder on Sun Lakes Country Club website. And also, EPAP is currently hosting Red Cross First Aid training classes. We'd like to have continued classes in September, and see your Lifestyles magazine for the current information on the first aid classes. Okay. To give you practice, and Candace mentioned this already, we are having a drill this coming October 20th, 10:20 a.m. That's in conjunction with the Great California Shakeout. This drill will be activating all of our resources in our EPAP, and that's when you can help us by putting that card in your window when we have our drill on October 20th. We'll be reminding you about this more later. Finally, EPAP is in need of many volunteers to help us help you. Our districts need coordinators, zone captains, and other helpers. Our operations center needs medical personnel, staff with public service experience. Please contact your EPAP coordinator or district delegate, or call us directly on our EPAP cell phone listed in the Lifestyles magazine. And yes, EPAP has its own cell phone. It's on a piece of paper down at the table at the back of the room. And you can contact EPAP if you have questions or need supplies for your delegates and so forth.